Imagine, for a moment, that feeling of pure, unadulterated anticipation. The kind that builds for months, fueled by endless late nights and the relentless hum of a demanding career. That was the reality for Olivia Vance, a woman who lived and breathed her job as a seasoned FBI special agent. Her days were a high-stakes chess match against the most dangerous criminals, her mind always wired, always alert. Peace? That was a fleeting luxury, a concept often glimpsed but rarely grasped. And then there was David Chen, her brilliant and equally tireless partner. David wasn't chasing down felons, but he was wrestling with a different kind of monster: injustice. As a civil rights attorney, his life was a constant crusade, fighting for the voices that had been silenced, championing the rights of communities too often overlooked and underserved. Their lives, though distinct in their daily battles, shared a common thread: an unwavering commitment to justice, and a profound, often unspoken, yearning for simplicity. This was it, their escape, a meticulously planned, long-awaited getaway to a place where the only urgency was deciding which cocktail to order next. They had chosen a slice of paradise, an exclusive coastal retreat nestled in the sun-drenched hills of Malibu, California. Picture it: the endless cerulean expanse of the Pacific, whispering secrets to the shore, the gentle caress of the sea breeze, and the opulent, sprawling grounds of the resort, promising nothing but tranquility. Here, amidst the cascading bougainvillea and the sparkling infinity pools, they hoped to shed the weight of their world, even if just for a precious few days. Their children, Chloe, 14, and Leo, 8, were the heart of this rare peace. Chloe, with an artist's soul, was quietly absorbed in her sketchbook, capturing the vibrant hues of the sunset. Leo, a whirlwind of boundless energy, was meticulously constructing a sandcastle kingdom on the nearby beach, his laughter echoing across the calm waters. For Olivia and David, these were the moments they lived for, the moments that made every sacrifice, every sleepless night, worth it. This was their sanctuary, a precious bubble of normalcy, far removed from the gritty realities they navigated daily. But as Olivia reclined on her sun lounger, eyes closed against the golden California sun, a cold whisper of unease drifted through the warm air. She reached for her iced tea, a simple, blissful gesture, when a shadow fell across her face. Opening her eyes, she saw him, a resort security guard, Officer Jenkins. He was tall, impeccably dressed in his dark polo, exuding an air of polite authority. Yet, in his eyes, Olivia, with her FBI-honed instincts, caught it immediately. A flicker of suspicion, a trace of discomfort that seemed to ripple beneath his composed facade. "Excuse me, ma'am," Jenkins began, his voice firm. "I need to verify that you're a guest here." Olivia sat up slowly, lowering her sunglasses. Her gaze met his, calm and unwavering. "I am a guest here," she replied, without a hint of hesitation. Beside her, David slowly lowered his novel. His lawyer's radar, always finely tuned for the subtle hum of injustice, had picked up the shift in the atmosphere. This wasn't the first time. For people like them, these routine checks often carried a different, far more insidious meaning. It was a familiar, weary dance, a small crack in the veneer of privilege that always seemed to follow them, even into paradise. A tiny ripple, yes, but one that threatened to shatter their hard-won peace. And though they didn't know it yet, this was just the very first drop in an ocean of trouble that was about to engulf them. That flicker of suspicion in Officer Jenkins's eyes? It wasn't just a flicker. It was the spark igniting a chain reaction. Just moments after Olivia had calmly confirmed their room number, Suite 507, Jenkins was back. But this time, he wasn't alone. Striding beside him was Officer Miller, a younger, broader man with a confident, almost arrogant swagger, arms crossed over his chest. His posture screamed authority, but his smirk hinted at something darker. The initial politeness in Jenkins's voice was gone, replaced by a rigid, almost accusatory tone. "Sir, ma'am," Jenkins began, his voice now devoid of any warmth. "We need you and your family to leave the pool area until we confirm your information with the front desk." David, who had spent years dismantling flimsy excuses in courtrooms, felt a familiar surge of irritation. "As we've said, we're in suite 507. If you want to confirm, call the front desk. There's no need to kick us out." His voice was calm, but the underlying tension was palpable. He knew this dance. He'd seen it play out countless times with his clients. Ordinary people being singled out, pushed around, under the guise of procedure. The absurdity of it was infuriating. Why the sudden urgency? Why the immediate jump to expulsion when a simple phone call could resolve everything? It was almost as if they wanted a problem. Miller, the younger officer, shrugged dismissively. "We've had some issues recently with non-guests sneaking into the pool area. This is just a procedure to protect the resort's property. It's a policy we have to follow." His tone was cold, distant, like he was reciting from a script, a flimsy veil barely concealing the true motivation that David and Olivia both felt hanging in the air. David rose to his feet, his lawyer's instincts kicking in, sharp and precise. "What's the real issue here?" he pressed, his voice cutting through the manufactured politeness. "We've clearly stated our room number, and you're still questioning us. Is it because we look different from the other people here? Is your policy applied to everyone, or just to families like ours?" He looked directly at Miller, challenging him to acknowledge the blatant bias that was now unmistakable. He knew that, for many, these routine checks aren't routine at all. They're often thinly veiled acts of discrimination designed to make you feel like you don't belong. It's a classic move. Wrap prejudice in the sterile language of policy and hope no one pushes back. But David Chen wasn't just anyone. Olivia, a seasoned FBI agent, understood the gravity of the situation. Her instincts screamed escalation. She'd seen it countless times in her line of work, small incidents spiraling into full-blown crises when handled improperly. She put a hand on David's arm, silently urging him to remain calm, even as her own fury simmered beneath the surface. The pain of being judged by appearance, of having their presence questioned simply because of their skin color, was a familiar sting. It wasn't just the suspicion from strangers, it was the weariness of perpetually having to justify their existence in spaces that should have welcomed them. Just when they thought it couldn't get worse, a chilling wave washed over the family. The hotel lobby doors swung open, and two local police officers, Officer Brandt and Officer Davies, marched directly towards them. Brandt, tall and unyielding, led the way. The relaxed, poolside atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a suffocating tension. Whispers erupted among the other guests, some pulling out their phones, ready to record. The situation, already tense, had just reached a dangerous new level. Brandt approached Olivia, his face devoid of emotion. "We received a report of an incident here. I need to see your identification." Olivia, despite the anger surging through her veins, remained composed. This was her world, the world of tense standoffs and quick decisions. "I've already explained to the security guards. My family and I are legitimate guests. We're in suite 507, she stated clearly, her voice firm. Then, the trump card, delivered with quiet authority. "I'm Special Agent Olivia Vance with the FBI." She looked him in the eye, expecting the immediate shift in demeanor, the professional courtesy, the recognition of shared authority. But that recognition never came. Brandt didn't bat an eye. He simply nodded, a cold, dismissive gesture, and interrupted. "I don't care about this badge. I need real identification. not something you can buy from a souvenir shop. The words hung in the air, a punch to the gut. David shot to his feet, his eyes blazing. My partner just told you she's an FBI agent. You have no legitimate reason to harass us like this. His voice, usually calm and measured in the courtroom, now vibrated with righteous fury. You have no right to treat us like intruders, especially in front of our children. Brandt ignored David completely, his focus solely on Olivia. His hand hovered near his belt, where his handcuffs dangled, a silent, chilling threat. Hand over your ID now, or we'll have to follow protocol. Olivia knew exactly what was coming. She'd seen it, felt it, countless times in her career. How quickly a situation could escalate from a verbal dispute to physical force. With a heavy heart, she slowly reached into her wallet, pulled out her FBI badge and ID, and handed them over. Here's my ID, she said, her voice strained but firm. Rand took the badge, barely glancing at it before tossing it back to her with a sneer. We still haven't gotten any confirmation from the hotel, so until we do, I'm asking you and your family to leave this area. That was the breaking point. David stepped forward, his voice sharp and unyielding. Enough. We are guests here, and we're not going anywhere. If you continue harassing my family, I will make sure you pay for this. What you're doing is entirely unlawful, and I will bring this issue to the public. He stood tall, a lawyer, a husband, a father, facing down a system that was intent on demeaning them. Brandt's eyes gleamed with defiance. Who do you think you are, threatening us like that? I'm a civil rights attorney, David stated, his voice ringing with authority. And my partner is a federal agent. You've made a grave mistake by treating us like this, and I won't let this go unnoticed. A tense silence descended over the pool area. The whispers of the crowd grew louder, some guests openly filming. The air thickened with palpable tension. Olivia glanced at David, her heart heavy with concern for her family's safety. She knew this was spiraling out of control, and one wrong move could make everything irreparable. Seconds later, Officer Davies, the younger, aggressive officer, stepped forward. He pulled out his handcuffs, his eyes gleaming with a chilling satisfaction. He moved towards Olivia. Put your hands behind your back or we'll use force, Davies commanded. Olivia stood perfectly still, her eyes now filled with a quiet, dangerous resolve. You're making a big mistake, she said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the air. She stared directly into the eyes of the officer approaching with the cuffs. A cold dread tightened her stomach. In that moment, like an unstoppable flood, memories from the past rushed back, overwhelming her mind. Olivia remembered her early days as a new FBI agent. She had faced off with drug kingpins, domestic terrorists, and international spies. She had kept her mind sharp in the tensest moments, saving lives, protecting national security. But never had she felt so utterly powerless as she did now. All her years of service, of protecting her country, suddenly felt insignificant compared to the raw, personal injustice her family was enduring. A vivid image surfaced, a case from just 2 years ago, when she had led an investigation into police brutality. Olivia had been the lead investigator in a case where a young, unarmed black man was unjustly shot and killed during a routine traffic stop. She had interviewed dozens of witnesses, reviewed hundreds of pieces of evidence, and uncovered a harsh truth. What had happened wasn't a mistake, but a chillingly systematic abuse of power. Olivia had fought to bring justice for the victim, but she never imagined that one day she would be the one falling victim to that very system. She looked over at David, her brilliant partner who had always stood firm in every legal battle he took on. David had always been proud of his work, fighting for the rights of the underprivileged and marginalized communities. But today, he wasn't just the lawyer defending someone else. He was the partner protecting her, the father protecting his children. And that pained Olivia more than anything. She didn't want David to go through this, nor did she want Chloe and Leo to witness a scene that should never happen. As Davies raised the cuffs, ready to lock them around Olivia's wrists, she remembered the countless times she had arrested actual dangerous criminals throughout her career. But here she was, a woman who had worked tirelessly to protect her country, being treated like a common criminal simply because of her appearance and unjust suspicion. Other painful memories flooded in. Olivia recalled the first time she and David had to explain racism to Chloe. Chloe was only 12 at the time, but she had noticed how people treated their family differently. "Why do they keep looking at us like that?" Chloe had asked, her eyes full of confusion. Olivia had sat her down, trying to explain as simply as possible, but the bitterness in her heart had been hard to hide. She knew that no matter what she said, she couldn't protect her children from the harsh reality forever. Now, Chloe was older, but Olivia could still see the confusion and worry on her daughter's face. The girl stood nearby, her wide eyes trying to make sense of what was happening. Leo, Olivia's younger son, clung tightly to David, his eyes brimming with tears. Fear filled the eyes of both children, and Olivia felt her heart tighten. She couldn't allow her children to grow up with the image of their mother in handcuffs, treated like a criminal. In those moments, Olivia also thought of her minority colleagues in the FBI. She had heard many stories from them about being pulled over by the police just because they didn't look right in the cars they drove, or being suspected in upscale stores simply because of the color of their skin. When Olivia had heard these stories, she always believed she could make a difference, that her work could help create a more just society. But now, here she was, facing the very thing she had always thought she could fight against. Olivia took a deep breath, telling herself to stay calm. She had been through tougher situations than this, but never had she felt so deeply hurt, not physically, but emotionally. She knew that if she resisted or showed any signs of non-compliance, the situation would escalate quickly, and that could put her family in greater danger. The young officer Davies, unaware of the storm of thoughts swirling in Olivia's mind, saw only a black woman standing before him, her eyes gleaming with defiance, as if waiting for Olivia to resist so he could use force. "All right," Olivia said calmly, placing her hands behind her back. There was no sign of surrender in her eyes, only a steely determination to remain composed for her family. She felt the cold metal of the cuffs as they locked around her wrists, and at the same time, she saw the panic in Leo's eyes, his choked sobs filling her ears. Chloe stood frozen, her face hardening, but her eyes filled with confusion and hurt. Olivia tried to reassure her children with a gentle look, but inside, the flames of anger burned fiercely. She knew that her endurance today was for her family, but she vowed that this was not the end. She might be silent now, but what happened afterward would not be met with silence. The metallic click of the handcuffs, cold and brutal, echoed in the sudden, dreadful silence that had fallen over the poolside. It wasn't just the sound of metal on skin, it was the sound of a dream shattering, of an injustice slamming shut around Olivia Vance, a woman who had spent her life fighting for freedom. Leo's choked sobs, Chloe's frozen, horrified gaze, that was the real trigger. And in that instant, something broke inside David Chen. David, a man whose courtroom composure was legendary, felt a surge of raw, unadulterated fury rip through him. He saw Olivia, a woman who had stood unyielding against hardened criminals, now treated like one, her hands unjustly bound. He saw his children, their innocent faces etched with fear and confusion, witnessing a scene no child should ever endure. And in that moment, the lawyer in him merged with the father, the partner, creating an unstoppable force. "That's enough," David roared, his voice echoing across the now silent pool area. Every single eye, every phone camera swiveled to him. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Do you realize you're cuffing a federal agent?" Officer Davies, The young officer who had just cuffed Olivia looked up, his eyes flashing with annoyance, still defiant. "Sir, if you don't step back, we'll have to detain you as well." David took another step closer, his resolve unwavering. "Detain me? You have no right to detain me just for standing up for my family. You're treating my partner like a criminal in front of our children, and I will not let this go." His voice vibrated with an authority that even the older officer Brandt, who had maintained a cold expression throughout, seemed to recognize. Brandt stepped forward, attempting to block David. "Sir, we're just doing our job. Your partner wasn't complying with our requests." David let out a cold, bitter laugh, a sound devoid of humor. "Doing your job? Is your job to harass a legal family? To arrest an innocent woman just because of the color of her skin? I'll show you what justice looks like. I'm a civil rights attorney, and I know our rights. The moment you put your hands on my partner without a legitimate reason, you broke the law." Brandt, who seemed to sense that the situation was spiraling wildly out of control, glanced nervously at the growing crowd. More and more guests had begun filming openly, their disapproving murmurs filling the air. He knew that if this continued, it would quickly go viral on social media, morphing from a resort incident into a national scandal. But Davies, the hot-headed young officer, still didn't seem to grasp the seriousness. He maintained his defiant stance. "We have the right to ask for valid identification." She didn't comply right away, and that's enough for us to act. David couldn't hold back anymore. He stepped directly in front of Davies, his eyes locking onto his with no fear. "I told you clearly that my partner is a federal agent, and you ignored that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Not only have you broken the law, but you've also humiliated us and traumatized my children." Chloe, standing nearby with wide eyes, struggled to understand everything. Leo, hiding behind his sister, was teary-eyed. In that moment, David realized that his anger wasn't just for Olivia. It was for their children as well. They didn't deserve to witness their mother being unjustly handcuffed like this. Nor did they deserve to grow up with the fear that their parents could be taken away simply because of a different skin color. "You think I'll stay silent while my partner is treated like this?" David continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "You think I'll stand by while my children endure this humiliation? I will do everything to bring this situation to light, and you will pay for what you've done." The crowd around them grew louder, their whispers one more insistent. Some tourists filming the scene no longer remained silent. They began talking openly about the injustice happening before their eyes. David could feel that he was gaining the support of the onlookers, and that only fueled his resolve. Davy still didn't seem to understand the gravity of the situation, but Brandt was becoming visibly more worried. He glanced around, seeing the phones held high and the disapproving looks from the crowd. Then he turned back to Olivia, still in handcuffs, but strangely calm. He knew that if this wasn't handled properly, the situation could explode in a matter of hours on social media. "I suggest you calm down, sir, or we'll be forced to take stronger action," Davies threatened, but his voice had lost some of its initial confidence. David stood tall, his eyes piercing through Davies as if he were challenging the entire world. "I am completely calm, but if you don't release my partner right now, I will turn this into your worst nightmare." In that moment, everything seemed to freeze. The crowd grew silent, eyes focused intently on the standoff. David and Davies stood still, David's steely gaze meeting the growing unease on Davis's face. Brandt, sensing the imminent danger of the situation, turned back to his team and quietly ordered, "That's enough. Release her." Davies hesitated for a few seconds, then finally, reluctantly, took out the key and unlocked the cuffs from Olivia's wrists. As the cuffs clicked open, Olivia raised her hands, rubbing her wrists, still maintaining her calm demeanor. But David knew the anger in her was simmering. "Prepare yourselves to answer for every action you've taken," David said firmly, his eyes never leaving the officers. As the handcuffs fell from Olivia's wrists, it wasn't just David who sighed in relief. Chloe and Leo also felt the shift in the atmosphere, but the moment didn't bring immediate safety. Instead, confusion and unease hung over the children, something that neither Olivia nor David could miss. Chloe, with her wide, confused eyes, couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. This was her strong, proud mother, a federal agent, whom she admired and trusted completely. But now, the girl had just seen her mother handcuffed like a criminal, treated with disrespect for no reason. In her young mind, Chloe was trying to understand why this was happening. Should she be afraid? Might it happen again? What would she do if it did? Chloe walked over to Olivia, her eyes filled with disappointment and confusion. "Mommy, why did they do that to you? You didn't do anything wrong." Her voice trembled, struggling to contain the anger and hurt inside. Olivia knelt down to be on eye level with Chloe, searching for the right words to explain without causing her daughter more pain. "Chloe, sometimes people don't understand others, and they act on wrong assumptions," Olivia said softly, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "But what's important is that we don't let those people define us or our family. I didn't do anything wrong, and we'll make sure that those who did will face the consequence." Chloe still couldn't fully grasp it. She lowered her head, her eyes fixed on the ground, her lips tightly pressed together as she thought about what her mother had just said. Meanwhile, David stood just behind them, his eyes carefully watching both mother and daughter. He knew Chloe had been deeply affected by what had just happened, and he knew that from now on, the girl would no longer see the world with the same innocent eyes. Leo, their younger son, was still clinging to David, his tears streaming down his face. "Daddy, is Mommy okay? Did they hurt her?" His small voice trembled, soft but full of fear. His tiny hands were still gripping David's pants, seeking protection from a world that had suddenly become too strange and terrifying. David knelt beside Leo, pulling his son into a tight hug, stroking his hair. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said in the gentlest voice he could muster, though his own anger still burned inside. "Mommy's fine, and we'll get through this together." Leo clung tightly to David, but David could feel the trembling in his son's small body. The images he had just witnessed would undoubtedly leave a scar on the little boy's heart. David's heart ached as he thought about what his son had to endure, something no child should ever have to see. Olivia saw the panic in Leo's eyes, and in that moment, her heart broke. She had always wanted to protect her family from situations like this, but today she had been dragged into this injustice and made her children witness it. There was no pain greater for a parent than seeing their children afraid because of things beyond their control. The crowd around them continued to murmur, the whispers growing louder. A few guests kept filming, while others watched with shocked and sympathetic expressions. The tension of the situation hadn't fully dissipated, but now it was replaced by a sense of emptiness and exhaustion in the Van Chen family. David stood up, turning to the group of officers still standing nearby. His voice was no longer filled with the raw anger from before, but with a determined resolve. "What you've done is unforgivable, and I will not let you walk away from this without facing the consequences. We will see justice." Olivia, though weary, stood tall, her eyes locked on the young officer who had unjustly cuffed her. "We won't just fight for our own justice," she said firmly, her voice steady but full of strength. "We'll fight for everyone else who's had to endure this kind of discrimination." Brandt, who had hesitated earlier, now stood silent, his head lowered. He knew that the situation had spun out of control, and the consequences would not be easily erased. The looks from the crowd, the phones still recording, and David's words of warning had clearly made him realize how serious the situation had become. Chloe and Leo, still too young to fully understand everything but old enough to feel the injustice and pain their family had just gone through, would carry this memory with them for a long time. Olivia, with a heavy heart, knew that she wasn't the only one who would have to face the wounds from this incident, but she also knew that no matter what, She would stand up to protect them and ensure that this injustice would not be repeated. The cuffs were off, the immediate threat gone, but the air around the pool still crackled with a residual tension, thick and heavy like the humid California air. For Olivia and David, the physical release was just the beginning. The real battle, the one for accountability, had only just begun. This wasn't about a personal slight anymore. It was about tearing down a system that allowed such injustices to fester. David, a man whose entire career was built on fighting for the wronged, wasted no time, even as he held Leo close, comforting his trembling son. His mind was already in motion, drafting the first lines of a legal brief. He pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen, dialing a familiar number. "Sarah, it's David. Drop everything. We have a case. A big one." He paced by the poolside, his voice low but firm, describing the horrific scene. "We were just harassed by resort security and local police, completely without cause. Olivia was cuffed in front of Chloe and Leo." His voice tightened with suppressed fury. "I want to file a lawsuit against both the Malibu Police Department and the Ocean Breeze Resort. I want you to start gathering every piece of evidence from this incident immediately. Eyewitness statements, the cell phone footage, everything. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was blatant discrimination and unlawful detention." While David spoke, Officer Brandt, the older officer who had finally ordered Olivia uncuffed, approached cautiously. His rigid posture had softened, replaced by a strained attempt at conciliation. "Mr. Chen," he began, his tone less rigid than before, "I understand this has been an unpleasant situation and we will be conducting an internal investigation. I hope you can calm down and cooperate so we can resolve this peacefully." David looked at him, his eyes filled with contempt. "You've crossed a line, officer," he replied, his voice cold. "Your officers have humiliated and traumatized my family. There's no peace after what you've done. You will be held accountable in court, and we will not stop until this injustice is made public." He ended the phone call, his expression still resolute. "You can prepare for a public lawsuit. Everything that happened here has been recorded, and I will make sure justice is served." Brandt couldn't hide the worry on his face. He glanced around at the crowd, still watching, still filming. He knew David wasn't just making empty threats. With everything that had happened, this was sure to turn into a major case, if not handled properly. The onlookers, with their phones still recording, weren't just witnesses. They were the tools that would spread this story far and wide. Meanwhile, Olivia, though now freed from the cuffs, didn't take her eyes off Officer Davies, the young officer who had cuffed her. She knew all too well that in this system, people like Davies often found ways to protect each other. Abuse of power like this was often covered up or swept aside. But this time, Olivia wasn't going to let that happen. Her family had suffered too much, and she would do everything she could to protect them from further injustice. "We're not just fighting for our own justice," Olivia said to Brandt, her voice calm but strong. "We're doing this for everyone else who's ever had to face discrimination like this." Brandt tried to keep his composure, but it was clear he was anxious about what was coming next. "I'll report this up the chain and request an internal investigation," he said, but his words seemed hollow to the Vanschen family. Their next target was clear, the resort management. Olivia headed directly towards the hotel reception desk. This resort had directly called the police and participated in the harassment of her family, and they too would have to face the legal consequences. "We'd like to speak with the manager immediately," Olivia said firmly to the flustered receptionist, her voice leaving no room for refusal. Within minutes, a middle-aged man with a worried expression appeared. This was Mr. Harrison, the resort manager. He bowed slightly to Olivia and David, but his eyes couldn't hide his confusion. "Hello? I'm the manager of the resort. I understand there's been an incident, and I sincerely apologize for any misunderstanding." Olivia wasted no time, stepping forward, cutting him off before he could say more. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Mr. Harrison. This was blatant discrimination, and you'll be held responsible for calling the police to harass us without any legitimate reason. I want to know what policy of this resort allowed you to treat us this way." Mr. Harrison stammered, searching for an explanation, but under Olivia's sharp gaze and the watching crowd, his words became meaningless. "We're truly sorry for this. We'll conduct a review to ensure that incidents like this never happen again." Olivia wasn't moved. "Sorry isn't enough. We'll be filing a public lawsuit, and you'll have to face the consequences. I'll make sure this incident is brought to justice, and what happened to my family will not be forgotten." David stood beside Olivia, looking at the manager with a cold expression. They both knew they were in for a long legal battle, but they also knew they wouldn't be alone. Just then, the hotel door swung open, and a group of people walked in. At the head was a man in a police uniform, his posture authoritative, his face unreadable. It was Deputy Chief Wilson, a familiar figure from local press conferences and public events held by the Malibu Police Department. Olivia recognized him immediately, the man who held more power than the officers who had harassed her family at the pool. Deputy Chief Wilson strode quickly toward the group, his eyes scanning the young officers and the resort manager, who stood awkwardly near Olivia and David. "I'm Deputy Chief Wilson. I've been briefed on the situation, and I want to hear clearly what happened," he said, his voice firm but professional. His eyes landed on Olivia, and there was no surprise in them when he realized the woman standing before him was an FBI agent. This was a crucial twist, for Wilson represented a higher echelon, perhaps capable of genuine accountability. Olivia stepped forward, calmly, facing the deputy chief. "I'm Special Agent Olivia Vance with the FBI. My family was unjustly harassed by your officers, and I was handcuffed in front of my husband and children for no reason other than misplaced assumptions. We're legitimate guests at this resort, and I demand an explanation for the discriminatory actions taken against us." Wilson nodded, listening seriously. He turned to Officer Brandt, who had been present from the beginning, standing nervously with his younger colleague. "Is this accurate?" Wilson asked, his tone leaving no room for excuses. Brandt hesitated, trying to maintain his composure. "Deputy Chief, we were just following procedure because we couldn't immediately verify Agent Vance's information. We didn't intend to cause harm or disrespect." But before Brandt could finish, Wilson interrupted, his eyes narrowing with displeasure. "Procedure is one thing, officer, but treating a legitimate family like this, especially when you knew they were guests, is another." He turned back to face Olivia and David, his tone becoming more serious. "I apologize for what happened. We'll launch an immediate investigation, and those involved in this incident will be held accountable. This isn't just a matter of police conduct. It's about the honor of the entire department." This was a rare moment, a high-ranking officer acknowledging a mistake, and the audience could feel a glimmer of hope. But for Olivia and David, hope wasn't enough. Not anymore. The apology from Deputy Chief Wilson, while a necessary step, felt like a pause, not a period. For Olivia and David, the fight was far from over. It was just the first round. As they prepared to leave the opulent resort that had become a battleground, a different kind of quiet settled over their family. Not the quiet of defeat, but the deep, resonant calm that follows a storm, carrying with it a profound, undeniable resolve. As they walked away from the pool area, the murmuring crowd still watching, Chloe and Leo were quiet. The terror in their eyes had faded, replaced by a deep-seated confusion, but also something else, a glimmer of awe. Chloe, usually so observant, glanced at her mother, then at her father, processing the immense strength they had just displayed. Leo, still clutching David's hand, tugged gently on his shirt. "Daddy," his small voice piped up, filled with a mix of curiosity and lingering worry. "What are we going to do now? Will everything be okay?" David knelt down, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. His smile was soft, but his eyes held an unbreakable resolve. "We're going to fight, Leo," he said, his voice firm and steady. "Everything will be okay, because we won't give up. We're going to make the world fairer, not just for our family, but for everyone." Olivia stood beside them, her eyes tender as she looked at her children, but the quiet determination within her was palpable. "That's right," she affirmed, her voice resonating with power. "We'll make sure those responsible pay for what they've done, and we won't stop until justice is served." For Chloe, the words weren't just a promise. They were a blueprint for a future where wrongs could be righted, where silent injustice would be met with a resounding voice. This painful incident, though scarring, had inadvertently forged a new kind of resilience in their children, a profound understanding of what it meant to stand up for what's right. The resort manager, Mr. Harrison, who had witnessed the entire scene unfold, hurried over, looking utterly flustered. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," he stammered, his voice laced with worry, "we are truly sorry for what happened. We never intended for this, and we will take full responsibility for it. The resort will fully compensate your entire stay and will ensure that no further incidents like this happen." Olivia looked at him, unmoved by the apology and the offer of compensation. "Money can't erase what we've been through, Mr. Harrison," she replied, her voice cold. "We don't need a free vacation. We need justice, and we'll make sure you face it." Mr. Harrison bowed his head, saying nothing more, realizing there was nothing he could do to ease the righteous anger of the Van Chen family. As he turned away, Olivia looked at David and gave him a slight nod. They had a clear plan now, and nothing would make them back down. Their commitment extended far beyond this single incident in Malibu. Olivia knew that her standing within the FBI, once a shield, was now a powerful platform. She would use her internal network, her knowledge of systemic flaws, to push for policy changes within law enforcement agencies, advocating for better training on implicit bias and accountability for misconduct. David, with his extensive network in civil rights advocacy, would leverage this high-profile case to shed light on similar injustices faced by countless others who didn't have the resources or platform that he and Olivia possessed. This wasn't just about winning a lawsuit. It was about laying the groundwork for broader reforms. A crusade for systemic change. As they walked toward the front desk to leave the resort, hand in hand, stronger and more united than ever, the Van Chen family knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but they also knew they weren't alone in this fight. With David's legal expertise, Olivia's determination, and the unbreakable love that bound their family, they would continue their battle for justice. The Parker family's journey, which you just heard, isn't just a story about confronting injustice. It's a testament to the incredible courage and determination it takes to stand up against discrimination, to protect the rights of oneself and others. Through their story, we're reminded of a powerful truth. Justice doesn't come from silence. Sometimes we must rise and fight for the truth, not just for ourselves, but for a better, fairer society for everyone. The challenges the Van Chen family faced serve as a powerful reminder to all of us. When faced with injustice, don't be afraid to speak out. Always believe in the power of unity and family love. With perseverance and courage, we can change the future, creating a world where everyone is treated equally, regardless of race, background, or social standing. If this story resonated with you, if it ignited a spark of hope or conviction, please consider subscribing to our channel. Join our community. Together we can build a strong network filled with compassion and a shared sense of justice, ensuring that stories like Olivia and David's don't just inspire, but actively transform our world.